Hello, my fellow Alaskans. How are we all doing out there on this fine and beautiful Monday evening? It is a gorgeous day here out in the valley. I am here at Real Life Church in Palmer, Alaska, and today we're going to get to hear from local author and activist Jackie Goforth. And she was there last week at the Mat-Su Borough when they had the big shootout debate. You can call it a massacre on one side, and then when the vote came out on the other side, you could call it the go woke. We don't care how massacred we were by the end of it. To talk about the books that we are finding in the schools here in the valley, also around our entire state in our public libraries, and what you need to know. And I'm going to take this little splash screen off of there so you can see the books have lined up here in front of me and what is there. And it's just absolutely unbelievable what they have in our libraries around our schools. And let me give you a close-up look here so you guys can all get a good idea of what we're looking at. And let me tell you, some of these, it really just kind of makes you wonder why or why not. Why would they be banning certain books and not ban others? And I'm sure you've seen many of the titles that we have here in front of us here right now. And whether you believe they're good or bad, it's always up to you to figure that part out. But when you got to sell a book into public libraries that has to have things like that, and things like that are not allowed, or they are allowed, but they're never ever allowed to talk about. It just all depends on what you're looking for. But go to your local library at the regular school system and see how many Bibles they have sitting on the shelf ready to be checked out. And so let's talk about it. That'll be the book, I'm sure, will be the main topic of tonight's episode for people talking out here and listening to Jackie Goforth explain what had happened at the actual school board meeting here just the other day. Please take a moment right now. Excuse me. Please take a moment to like and share this video. It would be greatly appreciated if you did. And we can make sure more Alaskans get to participate in this great event that is happening here at the Real Life Church in Palmer, Alaska. This happens every other week. It'll be 2 weeks from now on a Monday. So just mark that on your calendar for every 2 weeks on a Monday, and you'll know exactly when you're supposed to be here to show up. Real Life Church in Palmer, Alaska for the Alaska School of Government. I would like to give a little announcement, a little shout out. Go to our website, go to Politadick.com and click that support button. You guys may all know I am in the middle of a big lawsuit right now dealing with the puppet masters that like to control the puppets they have down on their strings. And it became very evident that I was finally starting to make inroads back into the political world after basically causing such a stir up that nobody wanted to even associate with me anymore because they don't like their political dirt exposed for the whole world to see. They don't like it when the puppet masters who get those kings and queens elected to our school boards and assemblies and those down in Senate, those that go to D.C., our governors, those puppet masters, the ones that are getting those other people elected every single year, the ones that are always pushing it seems to, we got someone for you, but when you look at their political affiliation, they turn out that they're not what they have but labeled beside the side of their name, even when they classify themselves as being a Democrat. Are they a moderate Democrat? They are so far and few in between right now. All we have is the very far left-wing extremist, radical, socialist Democrats out there, and we have maybe one or two that are still moderate that call themselves Democrats. And we got to do something about that. We need to expose those puppet masters every chance we get. And folks like you guys can help me do that by showing your support. Go into our website, Politadick.com, and click that support button. Your help is greatly needed right now. After going to court today, I found out that we're going to need at least a little bit of capital to be able to hire ourselves that attorney. And so we're trying to raise up as much as we possibly can to get them on board for this lawsuit that we're facing, because we did take the time to expose those that didn't want to be exposed. And we greatly appreciate your support in doing that. You can find this video right now live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, at Politadick and Politadick Unfiltered. You can always watch it live on our website at politadick.com when we are live. And again, while you're there, it's a portable player. You can take it anywhere once you get it started. And you can, at that point, you can also go to our support page and make a small donation. Help us cover those extensive lawyer fees that are coming up here real shortly, so that we can take the time to make sure that when we expose something, it stays out there for everybody to be able to find it, not get buried, and made sure that no one gets to hear the truth about what is really going on. And it's folks like you guys that have made that possible. As soon as I get my startup season for my other hat that I wear during the daytime, that for what keeps me fed and warm during the wintertime, that peak season is just about over. I got maybe another 20 more days or so, maybe 30 at most, then I'm still going to be running around with my head cut off, and then I'm going to get extremely focused on what's going on here in Alaska. And let me tell you, I have been paying attention to what they just did down in Juneau last week, the fun and games that our House majority there sold out Alaskans for a whole $35 million. That's all it took for them to sell out, to give us that $6.2 billion budget. And that's just the first part of the budget. Overall compensated, that budget's sitting well over $9 billion, but they don't talk about the whole thing. They always just talk about that small piece of it that they want you to see, that $6.2 billion. And you do realize that almost $5.5 billion of that money is going to the legislators. Only Alaskans are going to receive between $600 to $800 million of that in a PFD, because the rest of our permanent fund, you know, that $4,000 we're supposed to see instead of the $1,300 that they passed, that's going to pay for all of those big wind special interest out there that just got handed hundreds of millions of dollars of our money. How would you like to know that your budget increased $176 million over the next year, and there's no strings attached to get that money? You don't have to do absolutely anything to earn that money. All you got to do is just show up and they give it to you. You can be the worst at your job. I mean, you could be the worst in the nation, and you get $176 million to be that bad, because you are just you. You are that special. Well, they did it. They did it. Our education system, you know, we're the one that's ranked 50th in the nation, worst in the nation. We are, as the United States, we are doing worse than many third world countries when it comes to educating our children. And we've really got to do something to step that up, to fix that. I have the ultimate solution, but everybody always laughs at me. They always tell me, you know, that's like getting them to actually pay us a statutory PFD and follow the law. My suggestion is we tell the federal government where to stick it. We don't want another penny from them. That way, all the strings they have attached to that money completely disappear. Alaska can finally follow the Constitution as it is written, maximize the resources that we have out there for the full potential of all Alaskans. We are the richest in the nation. There is not another state in the United States that has as rich in resources as Alaska is. We surpass every single one of them, and we should be utilizing that to our advantage every single day. And the only way we're going to do that is to get rid of those strings that they have attached. The same ones that they have attached to our education system that has made it go so woke. The same one that has literally got us running 50th in the nation. And we're not, you know, if you look at all the overall scholastics out there, over half the nation is below 50% in their scores. It's not just Alaska, but we Alaskans have to pay for this somehow, and we're hoping that we're paying 3 times the national average per student, that we are getting 3 times the education for our students, that they are the smartest in the entire United States. You would think they would be for the kind of money we spend on their education, but nope. We are worse in the nation than everywhere else. I mean, less than 50% reading and math scores throughout the entire state. There is only a small pocket that make it above that 50 percentile, and it's not a big window out there out of our 504 schools that we have in our 54 school districts here in Alaska. It is just absolutely atrocious how bad we actually do. And they just don't care. You've seen it. They're all celebrating, oh, we got a one-time increase, but now we got to get that BSA formula. Don't forget that $30 increase, which is actually $60 per student increase that they gave last year, goes in effect this upcoming year. This will be the first time we actually have to pay that out. So when you're talking about millions of dollars more, they're already getting an increase. Take 130,000 students and multiply that times $60, and that'll tell you exactly how many more millions they already had guaranteed increase this year on top of the one-time $176 million funding that they want to change into a permanent BSA, base student allocation formula, into a permanent $260 million the first year, and then another. It'll be basically $300 million the following year because there's another increase the way they got the bill written that will be applied shortly thereafter. Where do they come up with that extra $300 million a year? They're not receiving it in tax revenue. They're not getting it in income. They're not getting it from anywhere but our permanent fund dividends. With the budget they passed this year, if they pass that BSA next year and they pass the pensions and benefits program that they're planning on there for the keeping the employees or getting rid of employees, if they pass the combination of the two, there won't be a permanent fund dividend next year because they'll have no way to pay for those other items without taking the entire thing. And that has been their intent ever since Governor Walker vetoed the first one that sat inside the account for 3 years before they finally changed the BSA formula and put that POMV formula out there. SB 26, I believe, is the number that one was at the time. And that POMV formula that they put out there that has been their vehicle for stealing our PFDs every single year. And we still have the statutory PFD law on the books. So they are breaking the law every time they do not follow the law. But they're the government, they're the senators, they're the House members. They are above the law. And you can thank our Supreme Court for that one, literally telling them they don't have to listen to our laws, they don't have to follow the statutes that they themselves pass. They can ignore them when they want. That's why do you think we voted to move our state capital and then all legislative sessions to the road systems twice now? Both times it's passed. Both times the legislators have said, we don't care what the will of the people of Alaska are. We're just not going to fund it. We don't care. We don't care what the laws are. And they blatantly slap us in the face with that every single time. And what they did last week in Juneau, selling us out for a whole $36 million is all it took for them to pass the $6.2 billion Turduncan budget, as some of them are out there labeling it. And Kevin McCabe and Kronk and all these other people that voted for it in the House that decided to give their yes vote in the end. You guys, I can't wait for campaign season next year. Whoever's running against you, I guarantee you, I'm going to be working my butt off to get them elected. I'm tired of the two-face that we have seen representing us out here. You are my representative, and you sold us out. I know what District 30 has to say about the vote that you just took, and let me tell you, I don't know a single person in District 30, unless they work for government, that agreed with what you did. Time for a replacement. If you know someone that wants to be that is a Republican and so it actually stands for conservative values, small government, limited government, please ask them to run. I will help them campaign. I give you my solemn swear. I will help them campaign. We thought we had someone good with Kevin McCabe when we were replacing the person that was ahead of him before that. And we thought so in our first year, but by the end of the first year, we found out with the bill of goods that we were actually sold, and realized what we had received there. And by the end of the second year, lost all my support, which is really sad. We campaigned hard, grassroots really worked hard. Ranked choice voting put in many of the old guard right back into place again. And we're now paying the consequences for it down there in Juneau. You can see it. So if you haven't signed the ballot measure, that will be on this next year's ballot election cycle to repeal ranked choice voting. Please track down those. Alaskans for Honest Elections is the name of the group that has the ballot measure going and getting the signatures on the signatures books. They are far enough ahead now that I think they're going to have absolutely no problem getting it on the ballot. The next step is to educate people why they need to be voting yes to repeal ranked choice voting. And again, today I was in court earlier today, and so I have not too sure exactly where this is going to go, but it looks like I am now retaining an attorney to represent me, and I need your support to help make that happen. I was a little sticker shock when I got told by the attorney what they are going to be needing to as a down payment, and you know, it's going to be worth it to have the attorney working for me, and it would be really worth it if I had help and support to be able to come up with some of, if not all of the funds to be able to cover that. Everything I get goes right back into what we're doing here. Take a moment, like and share. Again, we're on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. You'll find this on Rumble here in a few hours, I believe, and I'm now going to be getting it set up to stream live, and looks like Edna's ready to go, so I will switch off and let's go.
Here you go. Do I get to put it in the pocket again?
What's that? Oh, yeah.
If I could go ahead and have you take your seats. We're sort of short-handed tonight. We don't have the mics.
no.
One party has anniversary, and another party's taking family members back on to the airport. So we don't have a mic, so we'll all just have to shout louder. So if you'll go ahead and stand up, my husband will open in prayer.
Where, yeah, no.
We don't have a mic, you'll have to talk
Okay,
loud.
I'll talk loud enough then. Okay, since we're going to be talking about our children, I want this scripture, I think, is very fitting for it. It's, excuse me, just a second while I collect my thoughts. I'll be out there.
Millstone.
Huh?
Millstone.
Millstone, yes,
Yeah.
right, that's what I want, yes. It says, it would be better for a millstone to be hung around your neck and you to be cast into the sea to defend than rather than offend one of these little ones. And so we're going to start doing that seriously and looking out for the little ones. Because we haven't been doing that great a job, folks. Because and then they want to get the younger the better. Because I know from personal experience that it won't affect you that much until you hit puberty, and then this garbage will really start affecting you and being extremely costly to you. So we just pray and ask
Thank you,
for strong motivation here for us to get off of our duff and get involved in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen. And then Representative Eastman, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And so, as you know, there's been some stuff going on with the libraries and with the grievance activity hearing that was taking place. Jackie filed a grievance, and from what we understand, people that have been at the borough for 22 and 16 years, the attorney and the clerk, they have never had a grievance on a book. And so that's all new territory. So I would like to have Jackie just talk about what the procedure exactly is and how she viewed. I mean, I know many of you, maybe all of you, were there with her on Thursday afternoon, and we appreciate that because some of the things I was hearing from the administration was, well, Jackie's the only person that's having a problem with it. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning up. But It's, I think, just I don't even think it's the tip of the iceberg yet. I mean, we haven't even gotten that close enough to the iceberg to even feel the tip or see the tip. So Jackie, go ahead and, yeah, you have to stand here and talk loud.
We don't have a mic?
We don't, yeah, we know you're loud.
They have turned my mic off before in Anchorage. And I told them, I don't need a mic! I have a handout, if anyone doesn't have one. We got a couple more up here. My journey started in February when I saw a blurred image of this on Twitter posted by a group called the Libs of TikTok. And I was horrified. I was horrified at what I saw. And so I was going to do something about it, but I wanted to make sure that I had the right information, evidence. So I got on Kindle one night and I bought it on my phone, and the moment you open it up, you go, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. So I knew that it was unbelievable and pornographic, and I looked up, I live in Palmer, just outside Palmer, so I looked up the information on the Palmer on obscenity. And I knew they had an obscenity clause because a gentleman had been in there, his name was Cody, he'd been in there to complain about obscenity drawn on a fence in Palmer. And they had done something about it. So I went down to the city council and spoke to them. You have obscenity in a book down at the library. Something needs to be done. And nothing happened. So I went down to the police department on March 9th of Palmer, and by that time the library roof had fallen in on the children's department. So, I wasn't the one who spoke on this book. My compatriot Cindy was there. But I went down to the police department and I spoke with an Officer Schneider. And he came out and I said, I would like to report the library for violating the obscenity clause of the Palmer Code. And he just went, we have a librarian working here. And she was, because they had put them to work in other places because they were still paying them and they couldn't work at the library. So I talked to a librarian. I said, yes, I would love to talk to a librarian. And so I handed her a copy of all the information with copies of the blurred image, and I handed him one, and I said, in what universe is that okay for children? And the first thing she said is, they're not children, it's YA. And I said, as a published author, I know exactly what YA is. That's young adult, and young adult is 14. And she said, yes, 14. And I said, 14 is a child. Then I said, in what universe is this okay in a library? She said, I said, look, is there an X-rated department in the library at Palmer? She said, no. I said, then why is that in there? She said, well, you need to file a book consideration form with our librarian. And I said, okay, how do I do that? And she said, she gave me her email, and her email is bskow@palmerak.org. Okay? Okay? And I wrote down her name, and I wrote down the Officer Schneider's name. And I went home, and I wrote an email on the 9th of March, to Ms. Scow, and I said, I need to know where I get the form so I can complain about a book that you have in your library. Please respond. And I got no answer. So on March 10th, I said, second request, I need to find out how you're doing this and how to get a form, and no response. So then on Saturday, I found the Alaska law, 11.61.128 for obscenity. And it's right here. I'm going to pass it around. The gentleman in the back. So will you come up and pass these around? This is the Alaska law for obscenity. And I saw what it required to find something obscene by Alaska. But I also saw that anyone distributing this material to a minor under 16 is committing a Class C felony. I went, good heavens. So I wrote a letter to the city council members of Palmer and the mayor and the librarian that said things have advanced past the book report stage. I understand that this is a Class C felony for this to be distributed to children. And the very next day, March 13th is when they received it, the very next day that book came down. Palmer no longer had it showing as available at Palmer. It was available in 10 other sites, but not in Palmer. So I went, yes. I also complained about another one called Flamer by Mike Curato. Both those books went down. They were no longer available at Palmer. I thought, hey, look, it worked. It worked. And then somebody showed me that that book is at Willow. So I wanted to know how they found out where all these books are, and it's from a site called booklooks.org. Booklooks.org. Got another one when it gets done. If you go on booklooks.org, they have a rating system of books from 0 to 5. 5 being the most pornographic, unacceptable. 0 being innocuous. By title, and it's alphabetical. And so I sat down and I pulled up every 4 and 5 in there, and I made an Excel spreadsheet of where they were located. How many were in Wasilla, how many were in Palmer, how many were in Big Lake, Sutton, okay, all of the 5 borough libraries. And it came out to about 89 books. Palmer only had 4, 2 of which were already down. Wasilla has 42. The rest of the borough has 37. So, I had made them out individually for each library. I then made out a book. Okay, nobody was answering me on where's the form. Where is the form to complain about these? Where is the form to complain? So, I got on the internet and I found a generic, is there a generic thing for a library? Form? So I made my own. Yeah, you gotta pass this one around. Yeah, I made my own form. Here you go. Oh, okay. I made my own form. We need to, yeah, that one has to go around too, yeah. I made my own, I'm really fast at typing. I wrote a book once in 8 days, okay? I'm like. So I had all these 89 book reports done, and on booklooks.org, you can pull down the paperwork that tells you what section and what page of the book is really of particular interest. And Karen, where are you, Karen? Karen just spoke in Wasilla on this, and these are where she got some books. These all came from Willow and Big Lake. These are the ones that are in, did you get the ones on the shaded, the young adult?
That was all from the young adult.
These are all from young adult section in the Willow and Big Lake Library. And she spoke to them about some of the pages that were in there. And I gave them a picture. Now, in the meantime, I was speaking at the borough assembly, and I would wait until we could speak. And I would tell them, you have books in your libraries that are unacceptable for children, and they would say, okay. Have you gone through the procedure? I can't find a procedure, I had to make my own up. Then they did the gravel. There's a gravel issue happening in the borough. And so that took all night one time, and I didn't talk till 11:15, dead on my feet. I was the only one in there. And I said, they wanted to go home. They wanted to go home, and I didn't want to make them wait, so I didn't speak for 3 minutes. But I said, look, you guys, this is important. It's so important that I stayed here for 5 hours because there's bad stuff in books in the library that is being handed out to children. And nothing. So then I took pictures, the blurred images that I had found. I copied them, and I'm really good with my computer, my PowerPoint. I made my own little handouts. And I passed them out to the borough. And I said, this is what is happening in your library. And the action was from just about all of them. In fact, Moki, too, at the end said, I never want to see anything like this again ever in my life. And the very next day, I got a phone call from a gentleman named Hugh Leslie. And he gave us his email at the meeting on the 18th, and he told everyone, it's on the article, it's hugh.leslie@matsugov.us, right, okay? He gave us his email so everybody can contact him, because he works for us, which is true. The librarians work for us. And he asked me if I wanted to complain about this book. And I said, yes. Yes, I do. Then, all of a sudden in my email comes, oh, then, as you know, the library conference happened in Fairbanks. Did you read the Alaska Watchman article on the Alaska conference at Fairbanks, where they were told that they were to treat any parent who complains about books with complete disdain, and they were to learn how to challenge any parent who's challenging, to make sure that they don't get through. They're bringing up the ACLU now to train them on how to do that. My response to that was, I went into the Matsu Borough and said, okay, now that I know I'm going to be treated with complete disdain and shamed and everything else, here's 37 more complaints. That's my response. So Mr. Leslie wrote me about 3 weeks ago, and he said, oh, you have a book hearing. You have a book hearing set up for May 18th at 2 p.m. You can do a 5-minute presentation. Presentation to me is like gold. He didn't say you can talk to the board. He said, you can do a presentation. Hello. And then he sent me some paperwork from Ketchikan. He sent me some attorney paperwork from Ketchikan and said, are you sure you want to go through with this? And I went, why would he do that? But then I read the article from the Fairbanks Library Conference, and this book had just been challenged in Ketchikan, and the librarians had decided to keep it, and this was the attorney's paperwork showing me what was the reason that they had made that decision. And I love it when people give me information, please, because then I know what to do. Okay? I have talked to this librarian, and she called it young adult, remember? I talked to everybody I can find. If they're talking against me at the Matsu Borough, I will talk, and then we've had people up there saying it's sex education. I wanted to talk about that because I want to know what the argument is. What on earth is the reason this is in the library? But I can't find out unless they tell me. So I knew they were going to use sex education. And then I asked them, what on earth is it doing in the library? And they said, oh, it's the First Amendment rights, and you guys are book burning, censoring Nazis. Right? Okay, that's the answer I got 2 weeks ago from a gentleman after hours. In fact, the last time I spoke about this, we were in there till after midnight. That one, and I was one of 3 people left, me, him, and but I asked him, why, and it was, all right, so the 18th, I got to do my presentation, okay? And I knew I needed, in those 5 minutes, to get all of those arguments out of the way. We learned so much on the 18th, folks. I needed to get those arguments out of the way because they're not going to spend any 5 minutes discussing if I'm a book-burning Nazi. They're not going to say I'm going against sex education. I'm not going to let them say it's young adults and I can't figure out a young adult and an adolescent aren't children. And I was going to take away the First Amendment thing. But what they had sent me from Ketchikan was something called the Miller-Ginsburg test. Miller-Ginsburg test. The Miller-Ginsburg test has 3 parts, and one of those has 3 parts. Now, the first one is someone who's under 8 or over 18 knowingly putting some obscene material in the hands of somebody who's under 16? The answer to that is yes. The second one is the harder one. Is this material, would the average, reasonable adult in the community, now the community is specified under Miller versus California, 1973 Supreme Court, as the community the book is in for the complaint. That means Matsu. It doesn't mean Anchorage or Ketchikan or Chicago or Portland. It means Matsu. Is the material for a reasonable adult in Matsu, do they find value in it? Serious value in it, in artistic, literary, political, educational, or science? Does this material have political, artistic, literary, educational, or scientific value? If it fails, then it is obscene. It has to have one of those fail. Now, there was a sticking point during the conversation on the 18th because the library board can't decide what or means. So I would like to explain it in some easier terms. I'm ordering breakfast. The waitress says you can have toast, biscuits, or pancakes. That means you can only have one, right? The other way, you can have toast, biscuits, and pancakes. You can have all three. So now the rule says, and you have your law right in front of you, right? What does that rule say? Don't I have one left?
I think there's an extra one on the front seat here.
Okay. All right, now let's read it carefully. Oh, that's just prurient. I don't have the second half. Yeah, I'll go from memory. It says, would a reasonable person find that this item lacks serious value in artistic, or does it lack serious value in literary, or does it lack serious value in educational, or does it lack serious value in political, or does it lack serious value in scientific, and it lacks serious value in scientific totally? And if so, the material as the whole is obscene under the Miller-Ginsburg test. It doesn't mean all 5 of them have to be found not of value. It only means one. That's what the or means. Now, let's talk about as a whole. If you go down and order breakfast, and you order eggs, bacon, toast, hash browns, and you got eggs, biscuits, toast, and hash browns, but the eggs were burnt and cold, and you go to the manager and you say, my breakfast was terrible, and he says, why? And you say, the eggs were cold and burnt, and he said, but as a whole, how was your breakfast? It was terrible. No, the toast and the orange juice and the, you know what I mean? Those were okay, so it was okay. As a whole, it was okay, right? No. One of them was not good. So as a whole, it does not meet. Okay, so that's where it doesn't meet the whole one. And the last one in the Miller-Ginsburg test is, does the community adult, does the average adult in your community find this offensive? And to prove offensive, or to show offensive, there's a cartoon image in this book on teen relationships. Teen's Guide to Sex, Relationships, and Being a Human. There's a picture in here of a cartoon lady, and she says, F-U-C-K, the patriarchy. Patriarchy means fathers. This book is literally saying F fathers. The other thing it says is heterosexual, male and female, is an obsolete viewpoint. And it's based on a lack of understanding. Now, I argued that. I didn't argue it, the funny thing is on this book, Harry, what else did we learn? We learned that it's really annoying to sit and listen to people and not being able to say a word.
Yes.
We knew that, right? That is, we didn't have a say at all in that hearing. The only thing that happens was outbursts here and there.
In fact, we were reminded to be quiet.
Often. Where was I? Okay, we're doing offensive. Okay, yeah, right, okay. Is heterosexuality an obsolete viewpoint? They wanted to say that I was saying that was a viewpoint. And as a viewpoint, I have to allow every viewpoint. I'm focusing on the word obsolete. Obsolete is unscientifically, statistically inaccurate. We are a nation of 92.8% heterosexual and 7.2% LGBTQ. And the word obsolete means out of date and not in place. Right? So it is not scientifically accurate with that statement either. And the most offensive one, however, was a young girl. There's a picture of a young girl who is filming herself with her cell phone. She's laying prone with her legs wide open, and they actually give you instructions on how to put your naughty masterpieces out for the world. Okay? Now, two of those librarians also found that another one is pornography. When this book talks about pornography, it calls it a fun, sugary treat, and that the safe place to research for it is the internet. This is in the hands of 14-year-olds. Now, two of those librarians did say that those chapters gave them pause, but as a whole, it's okay. Because it's a different viewpoint. Just because it's a different viewpoint doesn't mean we can kick out literature. That's what they say. But there was something said, and this is why this hearing was so important. There was something said there, and I'm going to say it exactly because it's exact. There was something said there by a library board member. And she said, and please listen to this carefully, if this book were handed to each child when it came in, or recommended to each child when it came in, and there were posters on the wall of the pictures in it, that would be grooming. Putting a book on the shelf is not grooming. It is not pushing anything. It's simply giving a point of view. Grooming came out in the 80s to describe what pedophilias do, to make children be friendly with them, to befriend them and to get close to them so that they can push sexual material on them so that they can sexually abuse them. That's what the word grooming means. If I push a hamburger into a child's hand, that is not grooming. If I make them all read books on kitchen remodeling, and I post pictures of kitchen remodeling on the walls, that is not grooming. The only way she can call this book a grooming document is if it has sexual material in it to groom a child. And since it's now on the bookshelf, they're grooming our children one at a time. That's what that statement says. They know it's grooming material, and those 4 people in there voted that it was okay because it's First Amendment. And yes, I'm writing my appeal letter. Now, I'm breaking apart everything on science. If you don't know the history of transgender, the transgender thing started in the 60s with a guy named Dr. John Money. Of course, he has a good name for that, M-O-N-E-Y. Dr. John Money. If you do your research on Dr. John Money, put pedophile on the end of it. And you will find that everything he wrote was found to be fraudulent, and he was a pedophile. Mr. John Money was handed 2 6-year-old twin boys, and one of them had a really botched circumcision operation. So he convinced the parents that boy would be better off becoming a girl. I'm serious. And so he did the surgery. He had the surgery done on this child so it would be a girl. And until this child was 10, he was treated as a girl. His name was Jane. He calls himself Jane. It's in a Rolling Stone interview. This is all reality. It's on the web. You can find it. And this poor child was a very tomboyish girl. I mean, he was a boy. He looks like one. And his father, Mr. Money, Dr. Money, would have these children come down to his office. He started in New Zealand, but he was in Baltimore now. And he would have these children come down to his office so that he could have them pantomime sex acts with each other, so that he could film it and take pictures of it with other professors there. They were trying to show that you can train someone to be a different gender or sex, because it was the same thing back then. Okay? The father, then when the kids would balk and say they didn't want to go, Dr. Money told them to promise them a vacation to Disneyland if they would go. Look it up. This is where transgenderism came from. Now, when the kids were 10, they refused to go, and Jane was having a real problem because they wanted him to have the full surgery. and get on hormones and everything, because puberty was coming up. And he threw a fit and said, no, I don't want to be a girl. And that's when his father broke down and sobbingly told him the story that he was really a boy.
Wow.
Okay? So he decided to change over, and they had to rebuild all of his parts, which should have happened when he was a baby. He committed suicide, by the way, in 2004. Look it up. His other brother, the other twin, he died 2 years earlier of a drug overdose. Dr. John Muddy has a very, very bad past. He's deceased now. But that's who started this transgender thing. And what I showed, and what I'm proving now in my, I get to file an appeal. I don't know if you saw he said I could file an appeal. Well, my appeal is right 30 pages now. Because I am citing every specific thing, because on the transgender thing, for instance, if you read about it, how they do, I showed you pictures. This book shows you individuals with mismatched parts. They show a male with female parts. They show you a female with a penis. They show you a male with breasts. And they're all just cavorting around naked and looking like there's not anything wrong with this and it's going to grow that way. And that's not true. The surgery leaves immense scarring. I found all of this stuff online. I have posters of it. I have pictures to prove what it looks like. The scarring is incredible. In order to do a penisectomy, in order to make a female become a male, you are required to take the skin off of their thigh or their forearm to form the part. You are required to, they call it manipulate the urethra. Okay. That means stretch it, I guess. Okay. Now, the scar they have to deal with forever, but 25% of transgenders are incontinent. Do you know what that means? They're in diapers all the time or with a catheter. Okay. All right, so that's, and ingrown hairs. You understand the thigh area has hairs, and so does, okay, especially if you're taking testosterone. So now you've got ingrown hair issue. Now the one for male to female is so much worse. Well, I guess it's a matter of opinion. First they get castrated. They take the penis and the scrotum off. They use the penis as the new vaginal cavity. Now, it isn't very large. It's only 4 inches, 2 to 4 inches, okay? So it tears real easily. It's never going to be lubricated unless they actually use a bowel issue through it. I'm not joking. The amount of bacteria in them is huge, and they have to constantly keep it open. They have to constantly keep putting something in there to keep it open and from healing, from sealing. And 25% of them are incontinent. And you'll always have a prostate. Transgenderism is mutilation, and that's what I said, it is genital mutilation. Now, the drugs they use in order to puberty block, one of those was developed to chemically castrate pedophiles. It's called Lupron. I have done so much research, and it's not what I wanted to research on, but this is what we can do. Okay? This is what they want to do to your children. The librarians, who else would a child trust? The librarian, she's so sweet. She wouldn't put anything bad in their hands. Oh, yes, they would. We found out Thursday. There's a law in the government that says you cannot put an LGBTQ viewpoint over a heterosexual viewpoint, and they're calling these books viewpoints. Now, the reason we have a lot of books in the Valley is because there was a social media group called the Mat-Su Moms for Social Justice. And I happen to have almost all of their posts. And on one area of it, they said, we have to get all the LGBTQ books in our libraries. Everyone. We need to go down and talk to the librarians and get them to order them. We need to make sure, and I have this quote, I won't assign who it's to yet, but she said, we need to make sure to nurture and mold young minds. That was written in 2019. This book I have, it was published in 2021. Now, what can you do? I can prove it's scientifically inaccurate. I can prove it scientifically inaccurate, even in the 4 chapters I thought were not. I was asked questions at this meeting that were quite, that's why I went though, that's why I went. I didn't care what the outcome was, although I knew what it would be. I wanted to hear what they would say. And I want another hearing for the same reason. Why do you want these books in the library? Why? Right? Okay. The only thing that is going to work is the community. Is this offensive to the average adult in the Matsu community? Is it?
Yes.
I asked them for a show of hands, and everybody in there lifted their arms except those 4 librarians. So what else do we know? What did we find out? We found out that they're down to First Amendment. They no longer are doing the screaming Nazi book banning, right? They're no longer calling it sex education. They're no longer saying, oh, they're children. That lady also did say, you keep calling them children. They're actually young adult. No, they're not. They're children. I wouldn't have sent my 14-year-old out. Okay, the other thing we found out is the librarian at Big Lake, her name is Cassidy Drake, voted yes to keep this. The other thing we know is the librarian at Sutton, her name is Julie Busby. She voted to keep this. We know the Willow Library, Julie Mitchell, she's okay with keeping this. I would think that people out there in the valley would want to know why. I would call them. I would write them. I would ask them, why? Why is this book in the library? And all of these. Now I have 42 book complaints in Wasilla, 37 more of them at Matsu, and 4 in Palmer. Now the Palmer one is very interesting because after I had reported her to the police, the city attorney spoke at the next meeting and said that their employees were being threatened. Okay, and that was unacceptable, and that there was an investigation on that. So I sent a FOIA request in, and I wanted to know the documentation for the threat. And my answer back was, it's an active investigation and they're not allowed to let me know that. Okay. So when that library thing in Fairbanks happened, that book in Palmer went right back online. So that's when I knew that it must be a union thing. Because why would she put it back online? It was down for 7 weeks. Well, that police officer, Officer Schneider, had told me, he said, I'm not okay with this. So if you go and follow their procedure and they don't take it down, come back and see me. So I got a witness this time because I don't want to be threatening. And I went back down to the police department on May 3rd. And I filed another police complaint, this time with Sergeant Mooney and an Officer Moore. And I have a witness to this event. And since I haven't received the police anything on it, and it's not showing up on their thing, the police department posts a thing every week on the Palmer site. It didn't show up. I put the paperwork in and filed it and gave them their money to get my police report so that I can see this. But the Palmer has their own obscenity clause. It does say obscene, and for some reason they're saying it's not obscene because it doesn't meet the Miller-Ginsburg test. But one of the parts of the Miller-Ginsburg test is, does the community find it unacceptable? Not just me, does the community find it unacceptable? Now, for those people who were there Thursday, how obnoxious was it to sit and listen and not have a say? Well, I gave you the list of all the meetings that are coming up. They're all at 6 o'clock. You have a say. You would definitely have a say. That's how I got into this. They call me a regular. And I'm there all the time with Cindy at Palmer, and they call us a small group. I'm one of a small group. We're not a small group. It's just, we need to have people who care. Do you care that this is out there in the library and being handed to 14-year-olds? What if that 14-year-old has a younger brother or sister? Is that a violation? No, because supposedly it's not obscene. So community, we need the community involved in this effort. And I think, if you want, I gave you a list on the very back of all of the titles of the books I have complained at, and where they are. That is only the Matsu-Boro ones. I didn't print out Wasilla and Palmer because they're their separate entities, and that one was the one I delivered to Matsu-Boro. But I have the Wasilla one that they're 42 books. And as you can see, it wasn't hard to go get them. They're there. This one is specifically targeted to children. Do you know how you know? R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company versus Mangini, 1994. Do you remember that case? Joe Camel. Now do you remember that case? Joe Camel was being used to target children for a product, and that's exactly what this is. And they asked me if I didn't find the last 2 chapters on rejection and jealousy of value, because they were trying to prove as a whole. And I said, this book reminds me of a wolf wrapped in sheep's clothing. If you're a parent and you just look at the front or the back, you're going to find it's pretty innocuous. But you know what? There's some scientific issues now in 1 and 2, because they told me where I need to go look. That's what May 18th at 2 o'clock did. It was so valuable, because I have a lot more hearings, and I expect to have hearing in Palmer with this. And when I do, I will be alerting everyone. Oh, Palmer has done nothing with the 4 requests I've sent in. So I gave her 4 FOIA requests on Friday. The city clerk now has 4 Freedom of Information requests, and they have 2 weeks to answer those. And I want to know, when is my meeting set up for my book complaints? Because I'm making a paper trail. And it's a lot of work, but these are not going to disappear because the librarians want them there.
Get rid of these librarians.
Edna?
Yeah, I don't know, somebody has some questions and.
Questions?
Consider to each other since we don't, just go ahead and stand up.
She said, how do we get rid of these librarians?
How do we get rid of the librarians? They, like you said, the city of Palmer is in charge of their librarian, the city of Wasilla is in charge of theirs. The borough librarians are staff, employees of the borough, and so they're covered by the union contract, and then of course they are, hired through HR. So you just have to keep, like you said, the community has to get more involved regarding and testifying, reaching out. The only other thing that I would add is there are at least 2, probably 3 assembly persons that are appalled at this thing. And one, I believe, was there on Thursday afternoon. Yeah, and so you're going to need to get them, because they're the ones that can set the policy regarding what then the manager has to enforce regarding the library books. So you can do it on 2 or 3 different prongs. The other thing I wanted to say was, let me ask this: how many of you have a library card? Okay. So that's really one of the first steps. When we talk to Karen, that's the first step, because in order to be able to check the books out, you have to have a library card. And if you filed some grievance with the borough and you didn't have a library card, they would probably dismiss that as saying, you have no standing to be able to file that. So that's one thing I would encourage you to do. The other thing is to go and get them off of the shelves while all of this other procedure, which
as you know. Now, do you have a deadline for when you have to have your appeal in?
Yes.
Okay.
It said in the paperwork, the community director, no, who is he? Hang on. Hugh Leslie, who is the Parks and Recreation and Library Board Director, has 10 days to get me in writing their decision. And then I have 10 days to get an appeal in to the community director. I'm not waiting for Hugh Leslie. I will have my appeal delivered by the 28th, which would be 10 days, to the community director, because I'm not going to fail on any of this, right? I have a question, and it was asked. How do you change who's on the library board, or on the library hearing, the committee that was there?
You mean the people that serve on the library board?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they're a board and commission, and it's interesting, the two public members that I have appointed, neither one of them was selected by the administration to serve on and one of the people that I've appointed is here tonight, and I've known her for years and years, and that's one of the reasons that I have been talking and encouraging you, and many of you have stepped up to the plate, and I'm very thankful. These boards and commissions are very, very important for the direction, and when I ask this person to serve on the library board, which I think was probably at least a year ago, maybe a year and a half, and I'm not going to look at her because I don't know if she's welcome to stand up if she wants to. But anyway, I just laughingly said to her, because our families are very close, I said, you know, you're probably going to get in some really sticky, wicked things here regarding the library board, and we both laughed, and that was the end of it. But you know, I guess I was prophesying more than I thought it was or something. So anyway, so that is it. Right now there's no vacancies on the library board. There will be some people that their terms are coming up the end of December, and so so there probably will be a couple of positions that will be up at that time. And so
Are these volunteer? Sorry. Are these volunteer positions? I'd like to
the librarians are not. Now, the librarians are, you know, borough employees, so they get paid, you know, for being the librarian. But the library board is volunteer positions. Yeah.
Under what circumstance would a library board member be removed from that library board seat?
I don't know. I'd have to look it up and see. Yeah. I don't know what the thing is. Yeah.
How
go
were
ahead.
they chosen to be on that committee? Because there's 9 library board members, but only 2 of them were on that committee.
Yeah.
So did Hugh Leslie just decide which 2 would
I
be on
don't know
that?
if he did or Mike Brown did. It came from the borough administration regarding that,
And
so.
the other thing too, before that happened, he was telling everybody that was calling in to drop out because it was a violation of the
Yeah, that's
open
because
meeting law.
that's
Open Meeting
because
Act.
it's a committee, and if all the library board members had been present, they would have had to have been, it would have had to been a public advertised meeting, and it was a committee meeting, though.
It was a public advertised meeting, and they talked to the attorney, and the borough attorney said it was fine for them. But nobody reached out to him until after a number of people had already dropped off.
Yeah, see, that's the thing with me, it was a public notice, so,
On there before the meeting started.
and then they were told to drop.
Right.
Because they were.
When I walked into the building, there was a bunch of them on the screen.
Yeah.
So I found that interesting. It gives the appearance of them discussing something before the meeting even started.
So,
Do they go by the same rules that you have to have a quorum? Because there wasn't a quorum.
the library, it wasn't a meeting of the library board. It was this grievance hearing meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the policy that the borough has regarding how to handle grievances regarding books. But, you know, I mean, if they'd had 7 librarians on there, you wouldn't have gotten a different answer, you know? Yeah, Karen, go ahead.
Yes, I went to Wasilla today to get some books too, and I only got 5. I stayed there for about an hour and I found 5, but what really dismayed me is that there was about 5 or 6 written by a certain author. Every one of them was checked out. So, do you remember, my mother told me when I was younger that when she went to an all-girls Catholic high school, that when she heard that the Song of Solomon was kind of dirty, you know? Of course, that's where they all went, and they were looking it up, you know, and going into it. You can bet that's going on at these schools. You can bet it's going on. We have got to act with urgency. So if you want to go into the libraries too and get some books, and I mean, I don't think I'm not going to, I know I'm not going to return mine, and I don't know what anybody else is going to do. But maybe we could have people help out, because like what Karen got up there, that's $300 worth of books. They're going to charge $25 per book. So if you go in there and you get books, you know, you can ask Jackie for the author's name, and that's, you have to look it up by the author, the name of the book and the author. Go in there and grab 4 or 5. You know, grab 4, $100. But
How long when you check these books out, Karen?
A month.
Do you have 2 weeks? Or
you have a month. You have a month.
You have a month. Okay. But you can go back in and renew.
That's true, you probably can renew. The thing is, that's going to have to go on for a long time. We're not going to put those books back in, so we have to decide what we're going to do with them, Jackie. But at least they're out of there.
That's for you guys to
Yeah,
decide what
that's
you
right.
If you have to pay the fine, they're just going to buy some more. This isn't going to do anything.
Oh, hey, wait a second. That's a good question. How do you defund the librarian from being able to select books unless the borough oversees them?
That's why you have to talk to the Borough Assembly people to
Okay.
set the policy.
A week from
For
today.
the Borough Assembly to set the
No,
policy
13th,
regarding that.
The legislature has part to do with that too.
Is that right?
Well, just this last week, we just voted to give several $1 million to the Palmer Library.
So we need to make sure.
7 million?
Several.
Now, I got one question.
Sure.
And this might seem drastic, but if there is a law involved and these librarians are breaking it, why can't we do a citizen's arrest and give them a police record?
Well, Mike, you did some research on the citizen's arrest, and you can bring a civil suit.
You can go in. That was kind of more of a tongue-in-cheek Facebook page, but it was kind of going towards what's going to happen on June 10th with the cross-dresser dealy-whopper going on. But the bottom line of it, and I said this very specifically on my post, if you do that, you better have your stuff in one sock and it better be packed tight. You better know the law. You better know what the statutes say. You better know, you better do some research on if there's been any judicial review or appeals or anything like that. Because if you go in and you say, I'm making a citizen's arrest on Jane Doe for violation of Alaska statute whatever, and they are then going to turn around and they're going to sue you for false arrest. And you better have your stuff together. Because when they sue you, it's going to cost you a lot of money just to get a lawyer, just to do all that stuff. So that's it. Yes, it's there, it's in the law.
Yeah.
But we got to be very, very careful with it. It's dynamite.
And like I said, this has not been decided by anybody other than librarians. The library board in Ketchikan was librarians, the same makeup we had. They agreed that it had to stay. I believe Anchorage had their hearing on the 17th. We had ours on the 18th. No lawyer or judge has been involved. There is no legal statute on this book that says, no, it doesn't meet the Ruth Ginsburg test. And I would argue that it definitely qualifies under the Ruth Ginsburg test, and I would be able to prove it if I was but can we get a trooper if we say this book has obscenity in it. Then the troopers have to do the investigation, don't they?
At the borough level, I would think.
And Wasilla has their own police department, and I know Palmer does.
Right, they do.
Well,
No, we had Birds and, yeah, back there, BJ.
What would it take to, when I worked for the school district in Anchorage, we had librarians, we had parents, we had teachers and principals whenever they would adopt a new curriculum to review the curriculum. What would it take to get parents on something like this with the librarians to review what goes on the shelves before it gets there?
Well, the school district's a different story now, so Jackie's working on the borough side. So what that would take would, you know, the assembly would have to decide that they wanted, quote, a library curriculum committee. And so that would then have to be something they would vote on, and then people would volunteer and appointments would be made and confirmed by the assembly. So, yeah. Yes, go ahead, Karen.
Well, you had mentioned to me that grievances could be filed, but but looking at a grievance, where do we need to pick up a form at the borough office?
I gave you mine.
Okay, so this is the grievance form. Is that for one particular book, or do we need to do it?
Look at it, it says, I understand that the blank public library.
Okay, yeah, I see the form.
Okay.
So what if we were to fill this out, attach the list that you have here, you know, because that's just part, I cleaned out the Big Lake Library, I cleaned out the Willow Library, both of them are under the borough. What about if we were to file grievances and then have a borough assembly meeting and start with the borough level?
That's exactly
With Big Lake and Willow, because that's them right there, unless someone else can find books as they get turned in. But I don't feel like going back there, but we do have the list, which I worked from to even pick them out. So can we address this to begin with and see if people are willing to get involved with filling out this form and file it and then have an assembly meeting?
I handed these in.
There's audience
And then
participation.
those books would be tied up. So we tie up the books and get things going lawfully.
I started by handing in my complaint to the clerk at a borough meeting so that it was in front of everyone. When I deliver anything to the borough or to the Palmer, I will take a photograph for proof of delivery. But if you deliver it right to the clerk at the city council meeting, they have 2 weeks to handle a FOIA request, and they have to handle whatever you give them to on the library. That said, I have put in 4 complaints with Palmer, and I just sent their Freedom of Information request on what's happening with my 4 complaints, because I want to know where my meeting is. So, but I always went to the meeting. I went to the city council meeting and I handed it to the clerk, this goes to the librarian. And then at the borough, I hand it to the clerk and say, this goes to the librarian, or to you. And then at Wasilla, I handed it in to the clerk 2 weeks ago and told her, this goes to your librarian.
Well, since the grievance is dealing with these books, and we can, I feel that while this grievance is going on, maybe hopefully some hearings and discussion at the borough level, and kind of start at that, then we could just tie those up and not turn them in until we get things worked through, because these are X-rated.
But legally, you might still be on the line. Legally, you might still be on the line for a fine, though, unless they do
Yeah,
something.
but if we're working through the process of grievances in a city count or borough meeting,
Legally, you could still be liable for the
Yeah, you're
fine.
still liable to either renew the checkout place for 30 days or, whatever. Yeah.
Jackie, I'm concerned, the form you made, have you gotten any response on that form? Because they might be stalling, and that's typical, that way they can get their ducks in order. But if they refuse your form, where are you going to get the form? Where's the form come from? The legal form that the borough or whoever will
I
accept?
don't give it to the librarian.
Well,
They
no.
consider me threatening. I give it to the clerk.
They have to have a form, and if you don't use their form,
But they don't have one.
see, I know that for sure that they don't.
I have to wait to see what my FOIA request says.
Because they might do that.
I knew we weren't going to have
But you know, just the fact that if people, you know, you have all the books
Young
there.
quarterback.
I cleaned out whatever I could for this time. This is going back into that, what type of law the Miller-Ginsburg law, you know, where we've got enough people turning out to make it a viable situation that is a community alert grievance. Yeah, we don't want to see our kids go downhill more than they already are.
Number 3 of the Miller-Ginsburg test is, does the average member of the community find this offensive? And that's only going to work if the community finds it offensive, not just me. That was the reason why I asked everyone to be there, because I was going to ask at the time, how does the community feel? So when I get my next book hearing, I will be...
Gene, the mic is coming. Pastor Barry brought us mic, so. Gene, did you want a mic?
No.
Oh, okay.
Just raising our hand like we did May 18th. Proposing.
There was a request for members of the community to review books, and a whole lot of people, whatever happened with that?
That's the school.
From what I heard, there were over 300 people put in. The attorney...
A member of the school board, if she feels comfortable, let her answer.
I can. You can answer.
So can you give her the...
Yeah, so that was just the beginning process. We were looking at how we were going to do this, how we were going to put a committee together, so we asked for applicants, and there were over 300 people that applied, and somehow in the works it came that we would need to do a lottery system, which when we first discussed it, that was not part of our plan. But I think what happened is people started pushing librarians and school members, teachers and things to apply for that committee, and then it just became so huge that the lottery system did not seem like it would even, to me it didn't seem like the right thing to do anyway, because the borough, when they have a committee or a board, like Edna was talking about all the boards, the members that are elected, the assembly members, they select a person for that board to represent their district. And so I wanted that to happen for us. So we're still in the process of that, and this next school board meeting that we have this week, we will be discussing a advisory committee and how it will be set up, because that's my proposal was to have each board member select their community person, because the board would be made up of librarians, community members, and some district employees as well. So for it to be representative, it needs to be a community member appointed by their school board member. So that's my proposal. We'll see what happens at the school board meeting.
Yeah, it's like discussing.
Jackie, thank you very much for leading the charge on this. So in your handout, I see you've got all the books listed out. That's super handy. And so your challenge form, now, do we need to do one form per book? Okay. And once this form's filled out, what do we do with it?
I delivered it to the clerk at the borough meeting to deliver to Hugh Leslie.
When would be the next available time would be the best? Is that May 22nd? What you were talking-
May 22nd, the next assembly meeting's on the 6th of June.
The 6th of June.
6th of June, okay. So that would be the best time to deliver these? Okay. And do we need to get a library card?
Yes.
Okay.
They're very easy. I went down to Wasilla and got one, but every branch can get you a library card. It's a very easy process.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Mine's kind of a simple one. Was at a community council meeting in Palmer, and I watched the person that does the streaming for Cabbage Radio go up and give testimony that they constantly and consistently are reviewing the books that are in opposition right now, and then made claims that they don't have room to have their own personal library, so they then take these books that you are talking about here and donate them to our libraries. How do we prevent or put a system in place that can put a check and balance on, we get them out, they're putting them right back in?
And you're up to each elected body. You're talking about the city of Palmer. They will make their own policy and procedures for their library. The city of Wasilla will do theirs, and the borough assembly will do theirs. So you have to remember, okay, which one is it that you want? Or if you want all three, then you have to do like what Jackie and Karen are doing, give up your life and do that.
Going back to the comments about the library cards, Hugh made this point several times, that as a parent, if a child wants to get a library card, apparently it's in the print, I don't know if it's fine print or within the body, that parent takes that responsibility for that child to check out whatever book they want. So a child that's 17, which is a minor, which is a child, 14-year-old, 16-year-old, I don't care, they're children, they're minors, can still walk into, let's say an 8-year-old could walk into that 14 to 18 group and get a book. They could. But by what he told us, they could. Now, it's the responsibility, then he said, well, then it's the responsibility of the parent to say, oh no, you're not looking at this, and then taking it back. That was the contention on, that was his big workaround on this. It's the parent's responsibility, but it says in there it's the responsibility of the parent. And that's what he kept on going after. And I thought that was kind of a really interesting circular comment, but it does hold true that, yeah, it is the parent's responsibility, but it's such a slippery slope, it's just ridiculous.
Parents didn't know these kind of books were in there.
Do you want? I don't.
A few years ago, my daughter had checked out a book from the Wasilla Library. I got a phone call that I owed them money. I said, what for? They told me that the child had privacy and it was none of my business. I just had to pay the bill. So that was BS, what he was saying the other day. And that is, I'm just telling you, she was 11 or 13 at the time, and it wasn't a raunchy book like these. I think they even actually found it and corrected their error. But long story short is I went to Vic Coring about it. I don't know if the law was changed, But that is something to take into consideration.
Okay, anybody else have any others? Karen? Oh, and Betty?
Yeah. Wait. Oh, you're good to talk first. Go ahead.
I just had a quick question for anybody here that might know. When we were speaking earlier about keeping the books off the shelves and just keeping them and paying the fine or whatever to keep them out, can you, or does anyone know, if you took the books back, if you had only a certain amount of time and you have to return, can you walk up and say, I'm not finished with these, I need to recheck them out again? Will they allow
yes.
that? And how many times would they do that before saying, time's up, you know?
I don't know, and I don't know if it is a
At the library.
universal, if it's the same for all libraries. I don't know that. So you probably, when you check the book out, you should ask, okay, you know, so that you have it. Or ask for a copy in writing of what their policy is. Yeah.
I would say it's pretty standard for the library to allow you to renew it as long as there's not somebody else that's already in line to get it after you. So back when I was in high school a few decades ago, my mom and a bunch of other of her friends would all get on the list, and it'll be a really long list, and when they were done with their 4 weeks, they'd go back and swap out, go back and swap out, and a year later, the list was over, that's where the books went, so. Something that can be done and has been done for
A year?
a long, long time.
Chain
Well, if you got enough
reaction.
moms, yeah, a year.
Keep checking it out for a year?
Anyhow, each library might, have a waiting list so many long, but you can max out the waiting list if that's what you like. But you can only renew it as long as there's not somebody else in the waiting list. It's usually the rule.
Well, can I ask one question?
Okay.
I didn't go to that meeting, that was on the 18th. So what I'm trying to figure out, because you had mentioned something about the schools, and that this is kind of an extension of sex education, having these books available for adolescents, we'll put them in that category. So then that money for sex education, that money is being funded by what? Planned Parenthood with the school district? So we're getting a lot of dirty money and a lot of really bad curriculum that parents should have every right to have a voice concerning what sex education perspective their child is even being subjected to, even at the kindergarten level. So I mean, this is like a big, huge circle that is very perverse, to be honest. And so this kind of is connecting with the schools, because if I'm understanding right, this is an overflow of books going into the public libraries, right?
I don't understand what you're saying.
That they couldn't fit into the schools themselves?
No, there's two separate. Schools are one thing.
Okay.
Community libraries for the borough are something completely different.
But it's all kind of going under the justification of sex education?
No, the borough doesn't have, the Matsu Borough doesn't have anything to do with sex education.
Okay.
The
Well, yeah,
school
I would think
district that was
so.
about-
I would think it shouldn't have anything to do with it, but for some reason, that was brought up, so.
I was talking about being a parent on the board for reviewing the curriculum that was coming in to the schools there. I would like to see if it's possible to have parents on what's going into the public libraries, have a board or something like that.
To be honest with you, I'm sure the people on the
Yeah, because the
library board
schools are
are
closed.
parents.
Like now.
Betty. I'm sure that, I don't know all of the library board people personally, but the ones that I do know are ones that have families and are parents. Yeah, go ahead.
So let me play devil's advocate. How do you know that this material goes against the moral values of the valley?
That's why we're saying that it has to be the community. That's why Jackie's talk, I don't know how many times she used the word community tonight, and that's what has to happen. It has to be the community that says this is not acceptable or this is acceptable.
So do we stand at Fred Meyer's with a copy of the book and ask random people? I'm just asking you
If
to
you
back
wanna do
up your complaints with a valid response from the community besides us, that's all.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, I think you had 300 people apply for the positions, proposed positions on the school board thing, so I would say that there's, now whether they were all yeses or nos or in between or whatever, I don't know. I don't know that anybody does, but I would say that the community is interested in this subject. Go ahead, Terry.
When I went to the meeting that Jackie had on the 18th, there were 60 or more people there. And Jackie made a presentation. She asked people, show of hands, whether they thought this was absolutely inappropriate. Everybody in the room raised their hands except for the people on the committee. Those people had already made their minds up before Jackie ever walked into that room and made her presentation about the book. They were not going to, you know, take the book out of the libraries. Their minds were made up. They were quite rude and inconsiderate, I guess I would say. I think not all parents, because there are parents that take their children to drag queen shows like happens down in Soldotna in the park in the summer times. There are people that do think that way, parents that do think that way, but I think as conservative as the Mat-Su Valley is, I think that if we get the word out, we're going to put a stop to this and we're going to get these books out of all the libraries. And I can also say there's going to be a lot of parents, if these books aren't out of the school libraries, they're going to be pulling their kids out of the public schools. And my daughter's one of them. I already told her, my junior high granddaughter's going to be homeschooled because of this garbage and the grooming that they're receiving in middle and high school.
Good for you.
So I don't think getting the community involved and getting these books out of the library is going to be a problem. We just have to get the word out there and people are going to lose their minds. People just don't know the books are in there.
That's, yeah, they don't know it's in there.
Any other questions, comments? Yeah, Mike?
One of the, I think it was the librarian from Sutton, she had the long blonde hair. She made a comment that really struck me, was that, well, our society has now gone to this other level. So we have to allow these books and this type of thinking because our society's morals have changed. And I sat there and I went, you've got to be kidding me. That was the excuse. That was an excuse. That's all that was. The other one was, I think she said it as well, that, well, I'd rather have the kids get this book out of the library than the internet. But as Jackie pointed out, this book tells the kids to go to the internet.
Exactly.
So it's a circular, there was another circular. So, but here's then I talked to Lou afterwards as well. And one thing that we haven't really talked about is that there is public comment for library board meetings. He told me that's the first Tuesday of the month. He didn't have a date or a time of that. What I would suggest is as a thought is knowing that these complaints are coming, that every time that the library has a library meeting that's open to the public with public comment, we just hammer it hard. And then that way, the community is being heard at those meetings, so that way when these complaints get to these boards, they're going to have a really harder time saying, well, we're just going to do what we want to do. Lastly, you know, we as conservatives, I mean, how many times we've heard it about the PFD, follow the law. How many times we've said, follow the rules. How many times we've said, you know, play fair. And those are core values of our nation, in essence, beyond conservatives. But what did not help, and I do agree that the four already had their minds made up, but it did not help, is that everybody knew, it was in writing, that this was no public input. The only persons that could input was Jackie and the library. And I understand, I mean, I sat there and I bit my tongue on multiple occasions. I wanted to say something as well. But it did not look good for us to jump in and go after them the way we did. I understand the anger, the angst, the emotions. I get that. But if we're going to be going to these meetings, these type of meetings, and fight and do the good fight, then we have, no matter if we like that rule or not, no matter if we don't like that outcome or not, like Jackie's going to do is now going to an appeal, we have to set the standard on following the rules. And then at the same time, going to those school board meetings, those library meetings with the public input, that's where we raise the help. Because we got 3 minutes to do that. And we can really lay it down on them there. But when we're at these meetings and the rule is it's only those two speaking or the committee meetings, the committee members speaking together, we're there as observers. I hate saying that. I really do. Because I don't want to tie my tongue either. But we still, if we're going to say we want to follow the law, we want to follow the rules, these are the things we want, this is what we stand for, then we have to do it ourselves as well. And I hope you'll take that in with the intent that I have on that.
Thank you. I want to applaud Jackie for the approach that you're taking. There's, I think, two general approaches when you see something bad going on. One is you yell at the TV or you go on Facebook and say that's bad, talk about it, or you actually take the time to do something about it. And it's, you might say, well, gosh, that's a lot of time. You know, why does Jackie have to spend so much time? Or why would any of us have to spend so much time on this? Shouldn't somebody else take care of it? Well, somebody else has been taking care of it for a long time, and they put a lot of time and effort into getting their people on library boards, not just here in the Matsu, but in the whole country. And so since they put the time in, now we do too. Now, if we had put the time in back then yeah, we wouldn't have to put time in now because it would already be taken care of. But it is a problem that is big, that it's going to require more than complaining, and it's going to require a long-term vision like what Jackie's doing. You put together the paper trail, you check all your blocks, you take the excuses and you deal with them one by one. And on this issue and so many others, I think that's really the only approach that I think will have long-term lasting gain. Complaining isn't going to do it. And getting mad at one person on a library board isn't going to do it. And when they replace that person with somebody else saying, oh, we solved the problem, well, that's not going to do it either. It's going to come down to decisions and accountability. Like I said, on Thursday, we just voted to give $5 million to the Palmer Library to go, fix their building. Who voted that way? Do you know? Why did they do it? If you want to have a voice in this process, then somebody's going to need to ask those questions. Somebody's going to need to figure out, what to do about it. But there is no easy way to solve this problem, so I think Jackie is going about it exactly the right way. And it's really time intensive. So thank you, Jackie, on behalf of my family, for doing what you're doing.
Yes, but one thing you don't understand is my husband says, don't fight with me. I find this quite entertaining. I really do. I find it a lot of fun. I write books. I used to write hundreds of thousands of words. Now I just write hundreds of thousands of words. It took me 22 years to get published. I had agents tell me to please quit putting paper through the agony of my words. And I sent them a different book and said, you're reading the wrong one. Okay, that's what life is about. And the Lord has given me this calling, call it what you will. This is some really bad stuff. It's affecting our children. I have grandchildren too. I will not allow evil. Make no peace with evil. My sister is an artist and she's drawn me, or she's designed me my own t-shirt I'll have. Yeah, and I did that make no peace with it. That took me 8 minutes. I'm like, and my husband, go. So I actually am enjoying this. I have absolutely no problem with it. I can't wait for the next hearing. That's why I have to keep on them to set it up. Okay, and if you will be there with me, I'll be there for you with yours, because that's how this works. It's going to take all of us. It's going to take the community showing them that this is obscene and offensive, and the community feels that way. The 7.2% isn't the community, right? Okay, thank you.
The lawyer, the borough attorney said that this was a public hearing and notice. So any future ones are going to have it so that we can, then it's a public hearing noticeable, and then the public can comment.
No, I don't think, he did not say it was a public hearing for people to comment. He said it was a public hearing so that all members of the library board could either been there in person or been on Zoom.
I misunderstood.
Yeah. No,
Okay, so then the question then is the next one going to be all those library board members going to be there instead of these 4 that we know how they're going to vote?
Well, I'll have to tell you guys, hopefully you guys will see the humor in this. Right now, our main borough attorney is on vacation. His daughter just graduated from college with all kinds of honors, and so he and his wife were invited down to meet with the president of the college and have dinner because their daughter is such an outstanding graduate. And so we have the assistant borough attorney. And so on Tuesday night, with the meeting that Jackie was talking about, our current borough attorney says that when it is midnight, you have mandatory adjournment, because if you go past midnight, then you haven't advertised for that day, and so you can't have a meeting on that day because of the fact that you say it was today, the 22nd, we would advertise a meeting. So at midnight, then we had to do all of the borough business that needs to be done or call a special meeting. We can't go into the 23rd. So we came to that point, and the assistant borough attorney said, well, the attorney and I disagree. If you had never heard of attorneys disagreeing with each other. So John says, the attorney that was there that night, he says, Nick and I disagree on that. He said, as far as I'm concerned, that you can go ahead and conduct business, even though I gabbled out.
And then he said, you always have to have audience participation. And we had it on the agenda, but we were dealing with gravel. And so we had that one public hearing for, I think, about 2.5 hours, for the first 2.5 hours. So then by the time we were ready to go ahead and do the other business that was on the agenda. But John, the attorney, said, you always have to have public hearing, even if or public participation, even if you're going to go into the next day. So as Jackie said earlier, which since you weren't there, but what she was saying is she was one of, I think there were 4 of you, right, that stayed until after midnight. So then we had 15 minutes of audience participation, and I said, well, it's on the agenda. He said, no, you have to recognize people. So when we talk about, I don't know next week when Nick, the main attorney, comes back, if that's going to be his interpretation. But then something that makes it even more interesting, and I won't tell you which attorney is which, but back years ago in Chicago, they had some riot situations. One of the attorneys' family was in the riot side of it, and one of the other attorney's family was in the police department side of it. So that's what we have. So I won't say to you that we're going to have the same opinion. Yeah, right, yeah, the potential, yeah, potential. So, anyway, any more questions or anything? Okay, so like what she said is it has to come from the community, whether it's gravel, whether it's timber sales, whether it's doing away with the voting machines, whether it's putting limitations on books at library. It has to come from the community. And the way you change the things in the community is by your election, as you all know, for the school district as well as for the borough assembly. And if that's still not satisfactory, or they don't carry on with what you feel is, quote, your community standards. We just had my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, an old sister here from Montana, and she was really active back in the 80s, and they developed on the state level community standards for each one of the communities in the state of Montana. So she was surprised that we didn't have community standards written into our state law. So do we have anything like that, David? We don't have any community standards.
I don't think anything quite like that.
Yeah, I don't either. So anyway, Terry?
Real quick, Wednesday night is a school board meeting.
Right.
Has that been announced already?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I think Kathy mentioned it, but
okay.
Yeah, the 24th, yeah.
Get there early and sign up if you want to testify.
Okay. Any other meetings or anything going on?
I just got the Freedom magazine from the NRA today. This headline struck me. A disarmed army? There is a DOD task force for review that has been going over this. This is all under the guise of suicides of military. That's what they're using this for. So they come up with a 115-page report recommending everything from weakening shower rods to ensuring people get enough sleep to reduce the number of suicides. Those are probably some good things. But then it goes on to say the DOD panel's proposals include implementing a 7-day waiting period for any firearm purchased on a DOD property. So that means if I go to the BX as a retired United States Air Force NCO, I would have to then, if this were to go through, I'd have to wait 7 days, where I can go off base and get it same day. So you had these, and then this one just blew my mind. Raising the minimum age for buying guns and ammunition to 25.
Now, was this just on base or for?
This is on
general
base.
public?
This is for all military.
On base.
On base and, I guess, on base and off base.
And off base.
Developing a national database for recording firearm serial numbers, prohibiting the possession of privately owned firearms not relating to the performance of official duties on DoD property by anyone who does not live on DoD property, requiring anyone, because right now you can't come on base with a firearm, you can't carry concealed. That's already, but there's kind of reason behind it. And let's see, anyone who lives on DoD property, requiring anyone living on DoD property and military housing to register all privately owned firearms with a base authority, and restricting the possession and storage of privately owned firearms in military barracks and dormitories. That latter, when I was in there, you still had to, you couldn't have a firearm in the barracks. That was a big no-no. In fact, one of my buddies discharged a 20 gauge into the ceiling, and he got his stripes taken away from him. That was back in '72. So this is, you might want to get, if you're an NRA member, when you get this, when you get your magazine today or tomorrow, definitely read that. It's chilling. And the thing that scares the hell out of me is the SecDef and his secretaries of the Navy, the Army, the Marine Corps, or the Army and the Navy and the Air Force. These guys have gone completely woke, completely, totally not so woke. Now the Navy is now using drag queens for recruitment. They got 3 of them.
Oh my God.
There's 3 of them that are now using for recruitment. Drag queens for recruitment. These are active duty people. So this is all crazy, but be prepared, because then I think Dan Sullivan is the guy that really fights for us, especially the military and vets. He fights for us like crazy. Lisa is about as worthless as bumps on a log. Bumps on a log.
Thank you.
I was going to say something else.
I know.
Bumps on a log.
I
know. I understand that. So, but we need to really find out who's on those military committees and really get after this, because this is really, and I'll leave it with this. What's scary, even scarier, is that this is allowed to stand, and these young soldiers, airmen, sailors get indoctrinated further with this, and we have a Kamala or somebody even, or another Obama, or another one of these guys, and they actually do start saying, okay, military, go down and knock on Mike Kuntz's door, kick it in, and take his guns. These guys are going to be indoctrinated to follow an unlawful, unconstitutional order, and they're going to do it. And that's what scares the hell out of me, because when I was in the Air Force, and when you were on active duty, you would be hard pressed to find somebody that would say, I'll obey that order. Hell no. I disobeyed a direct order when I was in Honduras from a full per colonel. I won't go into the whole thing, but I got taken all the way to the post commander, and the post commander told the colonel if anybody was getting a court martial, was the colonel, if he wanted to continue pushing it. So we had to fight this.
Any last minute, Jackie, did you have something? Okay, why don't we stand and go ahead and dismiss in prayer. So Lord, again, we are very thankful that we live in this country, Lord, where we can freely assemble, Lord, and we can freely voice our opinion, Lord, and take our stand, Lord, and that we have people, elected officials, that are receptive to be able to carry out
what we believe is best for our community, Lord, whether it's library books, whether it's timber, Lord, whether it's voting machines, whatever it is, Lord. So we praise you, Lord, and we will continue to do the fight in Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
Okay, hang out for just a second, folks. I'm going to see if I can get a copy of that so I can, of the list of dates and times of these kind of meetings so that you guys can all participate in them if you want to. So give me just a second here to see if I can get that copy. Oh, give me just one sec. I need one of those pamphlets that Jackie was passing out that had all the dates and everything else in it.
Oh. It's this here.
Can I borrow it for just a minute?
Sure.
Which pamphlet do you want?
I wanted the one that had all the dates of when and where books. I just wanted to put them up on the screens long enough for everybody to see. Yes. Thank you. Okay, everybody, the Melody, this one's for you. You wanted to see when the meetings were and give you a screenshot, so I hope you can get this nice and loud and clear here. Let's see if we can get a little bit better without so much background. Just can't win in here. I must be sitting just right for the light, but that's much better than it was here just a second ago. So that is when all the meetings are going to be and where and what time. Take a picture right now, snap it. Melody, this one's for you. Snap that snapshot. It's a good opportunity. I'll hold this up here for just a few more seconds before I flip the page again. Here is the look at the books and challenge. We'll get a little closer so you can see each one a little bit clearer. Next set of challenge books. And the very last thing here. All right, everybody, I'd like to thank you guys all for being here tonight. We're at Real Life Church, Alaska School of Government, and that was Jackie Goforth giving not very, very good presentation tonight about what is going on within our public schools and libraries and the books that are in contention. Please take a moment to like and share this video. Also go to our website, Politadick.com. Click that support button. You may have heard I'm in the middle of a lawsuit protecting our freedoms for you and me and for everybody else in the United States. And it takes an army to be able to combat the puppet masters and the political shenanigans that they will use and the clout that they have behind the scenes. I need your support. Attorneys are going to be costing me a small fortune this summer to be able to battle this battle, but I'm going to fight it all the way to the end. As I've stated since day one, I'm willing to take this one all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary. It'll never see the Supreme Court, but you get the idea. I am not backing down. I am not going to run away from this fight, and I could really use your help. It is going to cost a small fortune to battle this battle for you and me to make sure we have more accountability in the election process going on in Alaska. Help maybe remove some of those puppet masters that keep electing those people that once they get into position completely sell us out our voices and votes. If we can get those people out of the way, maybe we can find the right kind of people out there to help get elected and into those positions, and we'll have accountability back within our governments once and for all. And it will take each and every one of us doing something about it. Your one step, the small little thing you can do is like, share this video, make sure other people get to see it. That's one thing. Next thing you can do is go to our website, Politadick.com, click that support button, make a small donation, help us fight our battle. If we end up not using it all, I'll guarantee you that money is going to go right back into expanding what we're doing. We keep upgrading year after year, and right now we won't be able to do any upgrades if we got to pay for this all out of our own pocket. In fact, it could be enough to completely shut us down. But with your support, we can change that. You can still have me out here as your voice, speaking up, showing up, doing this, live streaming, uncut, unfiltered, uncensored, something mainstream media forgot how to do a very long time ago. Thank you guys all for being here tonight. Again, like and share.